I have been putting this off for years. And welcome to another video. So today's video is the longly awaited my horse riding story. So you guys have been asking me to do this literally for years, and I finally got around to sorting out the pictures and putting my story together for you. So because my story is so long and I've actually been in the saddle 23 years nearly, I have made a timeline. So this will hopefully help us navigate through the years and sort of any milestones and the amount of horses I've had and things like that. So we're going to start right at the beginning, and that all begins in 1997 because that was the year I was born. So nearly 23 years ago, because it's my birthday on the 20th of May. So 23 years ago I was born, and very luckily I was born into a family of equestrians. So my mum is a horse rider and she already had 2 horses when I was born. So she had James, who was actually my first pony, and I'll come on to him in more detail in a second. And she also had her horse, so he was called Sovereign. And one of my earliest memories of horses, and actually one of my earliest memories of all time, is being sat on him. So I actually came out of the hospital and then within a couple of days my mum was already taking me down to the stables because she still had her horses to look after. So I've literally been around horses my entire life. And I remember being a tiny toddler and just being able to sit up, and I used to sit on top of Sovereign and hold his mane, and my mum used to muck out around me, and he was so good he wouldn't move a muscle, and that's like one of the things that I like, that's my earliest memory. So once I'd actually reached being a toddler and actually knew what a horse was, that was when I actually started competing. So I had my first pony, James. My mum had owned him since 1992, so he was 5 years old when I came along, and she'd owned him since he was 6 months old. He was a Dartmoor pony that had been rescued, so he'd been dragged away from his mum, and a rescue had taken loads of them. His mum had sadly gone for dog meat. There'd been like a big poaching and loads of mares had gone and they'd left all of the foals. So my mum took James on at 6 months old, and my sister rode him for a little bit, but my sister's allergic to horses and she's my older sister. So when I was born, my mum finally saw the opportunity to have a little jockey, and that is exactly what I was. So James was my first pony. We actually started competing and showing when I was just 3 years old, so that was back in 2000, and I literally remember my mum bribing me with sweets to get on the pony and take my dummy out because I didn't see why I couldn't go in the show ring with a dummy. And I remember my clothes were so big on me because they didn't even sell showing gear that small, so my mum literally had to find the smallest size she could, and I remember my jodhpurs were like double the length of my legs, and my mum just cut them off at the bottom and shoved them in my boots because I was so small and so young to be competing, obviously on the lead rein. But yes, I've been showing since I was 3. So James wasn't exactly a very well-behaved first pony. He liked to buck, he liked to rear. So before you took him in, he was an absolute nightmare, and he'd be bucking and rearing, and he'd get me off like 3 times before I'd even got into the ring. And then the second he was in that ring, he was an angel and perfect until he got his rosette. Then, once he'd gotten his rosette, he used to try and kick the judge or bite the judge every single time. But we won so many rosettes and so many cups, and I literally have like so many things that I've won with him. He was really good at showing, but I obviously wanted to progress, so I could walk and trot and canter a little bit on the lead ring with James, but there wasn't that much else he'd do. He wouldn't go off the lead rein. So growing up for many years, we just did showing, and I used to hack him out with my mum, but I always remember if he was ever off the lead rein, he was a nightmare. He was very much a first pony and a lead rein pony, and that was kind of it. So whilst I was growing up and everything, we sadly lost Sovereign. So Sovereign died in 2002. And my mum bought Archie. So Archie was a thoroughbred, and he was cross Welsh, so he had the flightiness of the thoroughbred and the stubbornness of the Welsh, and they kind of made Archie. Now, he was a fantastic horse, but he was slightly crazy. So I didn't really have too much to do with Archie at this stage because obviously I was very young. He was about 15-1. He'd actually be perfect for me now, but back then obviously I was still little. But so Archie was predominantly my mum's horse. So by 2003, I had sort of got to the stage where I didn't want to be on the lead rein anymore. I was more than capable of riding off the lead rein, so we bought my second pony, and that was Tinkerbell. So Tinkerbell was a little Welshie. She was the sweetest little horse ever. In hindsight, we probably shouldn't have bought her because she wasn't much bigger than James, so I always knew I was going to outgrow her quite quickly, but she taught me how to ride off the lead rein really, really well, apart from her canter, because she was the fizziest little bomb ever. Now, I didn't do much in terms of competing with Tinkerbell because at this stage I was kind of getting into dance and things like that, so I wasn't riding as much as I had been previously when I was showing and things. And then a lot of things changed at home during these years as well, so I just kind of rode Tinkerbell, you know, casually, being only like 7, 8. But sadly, I did start to outgrow her, so I kind of got to the point where I was riding her less and less, and I was riding more of the riding school horses at Pony Club because I joined Pony Club and I absolutely loved it, but I was part of a riding school, and so I'd started jumping and I'd started doing a lot of really exciting things, but on their horses because Tinkerbell was just a little bit too small. And it was around this point that my dad actually got his first horse. So we actually bought another horse, which meant at this stage we got to 4 horses. So my dad bought Henry. He was a 17-2 Irish draft cross, and he was an amazing horse. He was a hunter. I used to ride him a little bit. I'd get on him. And he was really naughty for my dad because he kind of took the mick out of novices, but he taught my dad everything he knew, and he was such a big gentle giant and we loved him to pieces. So we bought Henry in 2007, and then in 2008 I had completely outgrown Tinkerbell by this point. I was 11 years old, and she was just too small for me, and I was riding her less and less. So we'd actually put off selling her for quite a while because, as you can probably guess, we don't like selling horses. And Tinkerbell's sale is actually the reason we've said we'll never ever sell a horse again, but I'll come on to that in a minute. So we knew that I needed a bigger horse and something that would take me to the next level of my riding. So it wasn't fair to keep Tinkerbell in a field. She was only 13 at this point. She was about 12 going on 13. So we decided to sell her, and also we needed to sell her to afford another horse for me. So we sold Tinkerbell, and we thought we'd sold her to a really good home. And then we started the look for my next pony, and we did the worst thing anyone can ever do. We went out looking and we bought the first one we saw, and that was Taffy. Now, I don't regret buying him at all, but yeah, we broke every rule on this one. So Taffy is a 14-hand Welsh Section C, and we still have him to this day. And Taffy, we went to go see him, and I remember he was at a Welsh stud because the lady was selling him for a friend, and he was amazing. I went and I jumped him, I took him around across country. He spooked really badly at some pigs, and he's hated pigs ever since. We literally spent like 3-4 hours trying him out. Everything we could, we chucked at him. But yeah, so we did buy him, and we brought him home like a week or so later. So Taffy is the horse that out of all of the horses I've ever owned or ever ridden, he was the big one that changed everything for me. So I went from just being this kid that just rode for fun and loved it to being serious about competing. we got Taffy, and I spent a good 6 months just getting used to him. I used to hack him out constantly. We used to go galloping over stubble fields, and I used to drag my friend Jenny along with me. He was a fantastic jumper. Unfortunately, for some reason, all of my files from 2009 I can't find anywhere. I have one laptop that I can't get into, and it doesn't like turn on anymore, and I'm pretty sure all of my video footage from Pony Club, from every event that we ever did, is all on there. So at some point I'm going to pay someone to get into that laptop, and I'm going to do a story time that is dedicated just to Taffy. So don't worry, that will be coming, but I'll just go through it now, and unfortunately you'll just have to see some rather rubbish photos, but the videos will come one day. So anyway, so I started taking Taffy to Pony Club and competing with my local pony club. We did a lot of dressage to begin with, and on every single test the feedback we got was very forward test, and that was because me and Taffy hated dressage, so we did it as fast as possible so it was over, and so that I could like go and do something else, because he didn't like doing dressage, I didn't like doing it either. But while we were still getting like our groundwork and everything sorted, that's what we did. So then I really started jumping Taffy, and this was when I realised he was something special. So I had a trainer at the time called Ellie, and she was fantastic. She really pushed me with Taffy, so we were jumping quite high on him. I remember once she used to like to put the jumps up as I was heading towards them, because I'd refused to jump, and she'd literally run as I'd like already set off towards the jump, and she'd stick it up. She was a bit crazy, and we once jumped straight over her head. I remember that so vividly. So me and Taffy had so much fun, but he was very forward, and he was very strong. It never fazed me at the time, because my confidence was just growing on him. And we did Chase Me Charlie, and he literally would be against 16-hand horses at Pony Club and he'd win. He had no fear whatsoever. He was always very spooky, very bolshy, and very strong, but that never really put me off. I remember it was the summer of 2010, and me and my friend Jenny had gone out on a normal hack as we did every other day, and as I said, me and Taffy were competing really well at this point. We were doing show jumping, we were doing dressage, we were representing my pony club, and I think we'd just come back from Bramham, having done dressage at Bramham. We did a local show as well, that's one thing I forgot. I did a bit of showing with him, but he wasn't registered, so he couldn't do anything to too high a level. But I remember he came first whenever we took him showing, and he absolutely loved showing. So mountain and moorland classes were what we used to pop him in, and he loved that. But anyway, back to this. Sorry, I'm going to try and keep it going. So in 2010, me and my friend went out on a hack, just like we did any other time. And I remember it was the first time I'd gone out on a hack and my parents had left the yard. So normally my parents would be at the yard because we were on livery at this point. And they'd stay on the yard and do the horses or whatever. And I said to them this day, I was like, oh, me and Jenny are going for a hack. We're probably going to be about, 3 hours. We're planning on going quite far and going across all the fields. So you just get off home and come pick me up after. And they're like, yeah, okay, keep your phone on you. And we set off on this hack, and then there was this massive tractor with like the caterpillar wheels that tanks have on them, and he was revving his engine really high. And I just remember being like, oh, it'll be fine. Like, Taffy had actually seen this particular tractor before, but the horse in front of me, so we used to ride out with a horse called Benson. Not like this tractor at all. So he started spinning and going up and going backwards, and Taffy, when another horse like kicked off, he was like, I am out of this situation, I am done. So Taffy turned around quick as anything and just galloped. And I remember him setting off for home and galloping up this like road, and there was just a car heading straight for us, and I was like, I'm going to die. And I just was so out of control. This pony was flat out galloping towards this car. This car had nowhere to go because it was like a one-way track. They couldn't pull in, they couldn't swerve, they just kind of had to try and stop. But Taffy was just galloping towards them, and I just thought, he's going to kill me. And I remember I was pulling and pulling and pulling, and he wasn't stopping. And his little neck, bless him, had got so short because he was going so fast. And then I actually managed to get my hands on the rings of his bit and pull one side and get him onto the stubble so that we weren't going to go, you know, head on into this car. But then at the end of the stubble is a massive ditch, and I mean a massive ditch. So we're on the stubble, we're going as fast as he physically can, and I'm just looking at the floor, literally racing underneath me, thinking this is not going to end well. So we're getting closer and closer to this ditch, and by this point, like, I remember my vision going blurry, and I just went, that's it. And I bailed. So I actually chucked myself off the saddle, hit the ground, and my shoulder took all of the force of my weight and obviously the speed we were going at. I think I was knocked unconscious for a little bit, but Taffy had just gone. And the first thing I remember when I woke up was my friend Jenny like stood over me with her horse, and I just said, go get Taffy. I will be fine, go get Taffy. So she rang my parents and rang an ambulance, and actually, luckily, the car that was heading towards me about to kill me was a doctor. So he ran across the field and he came and got me and checked me over and said, I think you've broken your arm, you might have done something to your spine, etc, etc, so I couldn't move. So we waited for the ambulance to come, and I went to hospital and everything like that. Luckily, Taffy was absolutely fine. He was just a bit shook up. He'd literally galloped back to the stable and apparently was stood outside of his stable eating grass. So he was fine. So I got taken away in the ambulance, and it turned out I'd broken and dislocated my shoulder. So I'd like chipped some bone off, I'd broken the bone, and then I dislocated it. But what the doctor actually said was, luckily I was wearing a body protector, which I always did throughout hacking. And he said that had I not been wearing that, because of the impact where I hit it, my ribs might have actually punctured my lung. So I was very, very lucky with the way that, you know, I'd kind of fallen in the way that my body protector had helped. So yeah, that was like my first accident I ever had, like serious accidents. I'd literally fallen off hundreds and hundreds of times before, but this was the first one that was so traumatic to me. Even talking about it now is traumatic, and it was 10 years ago. So the thing was, I wasn't scared of getting hurt. I wasn't scared of anything. I was just so scared in that moment that I had no control. And ever since then, I have struggled so much with my confidence, all just because I was out of control for so long and I genuinely thought I was going to die. But I am going to do a complete series on confidence and the things I went through, because after that I had therapy, I had specialist instructors, and I went through a lot to get back onto riding. So basically I lost my confidence in 2010. And by this point, school was getting more serious. I had GCSEs coming up, and I always wanted to be a vet, so I had to take that very seriously. So I kind of took a step back. I went from competing at the highest level I've ever competed at, and horses being my entire life, to I don't have the confidence to be around them anymore. So I'm going to focus on school, and you know, horses were still part of my life. I was still like caring for them every day, but I wasn't riding really. And by this point we also had bought Danny. So we bought Danny in 2009. My mum bought him, and she was jumping on him, and she was like doing really well on him. And I got on him a few times and rode him, but I just wasn't interested. I was too scared really. So just coming back to Tinkerbell for one moment. So I said to you guys that we thought we'd sold her to a really good home, and unfortunately the girl that we'd sold her to lost interest quite quickly. So I was in the middle of my GCSEs, and my mum got the phone call that she'd had to be put to sleep. So basically they'd lost interest in her and just chucked her out in the field with loads of grass, and she'd got laminitis to the point that she had to be put to sleep because her pedal bone had twisted. So my mum didn't tell me straight away because, as I said, I was in the middle of my exams and I think I'd have gone to pieces because I absolutely adored that pony. Like, we always said we were going to go see her again, and we always told them, you know, when she retires, we want her to come back to us. We'll keep her in a field. You know, she'll be back with us. So that was always like the agreement. And unfortunately we never got that, and she was literally like my little best friend. I loved her so much, so that was heartbreaking. And ever since then we've always said we'd never sell another horse, because no matter how well you vet the home, no matter how many questions you ask, no matter how many times you visit them, you just don't know if they're going to a good home or if the people will lose interest. Even if they have, you know, the best intentions in the world, those intentions can change. So that's why we've always said ever since then, if a horse comes to us, they come to us for life. Unless we couldn't provide for them, then obviously, you know, we'd have to sell them on. But when we take on a horse, we don't just take it on until it's no longer useful to us. We take it on for its entire life, and that's why we've got our 2 retired boys living out their days quite happily in the field, because I never ever want to have to go through that again. So then, just as kind of I wasn't taking as much of an interest in the horses and things because of everything that had happened, we sadly lost Henry. So in 2011, Henry went in for colic surgery, and we discovered that there was an underlying problem with his cecum. They'd opened him up and it was blue, and so we chose to bypass it. And he came out of the surgery fine, and then he suddenly went really downhill, and we had to sadly make the decision to have him put to sleep. Which was a massive, massive blow for my dad. So then, because of that, my dad decided he didn't want to be without a horse because we didn't really have a horse he could ride, and so we got Lucy. So then we had another accident after mine, because my dad was riding Lucy one day, fell off her and broke, I think, quite a lot of his ribs anyway. So he then vowed never to get on another horse. So by this point, we've got James, we've got Danny, we've got Lucy, and we've got Archie. So we had 4 horses, all on livery, and we were like, right, we need to find somewhere that we can keep these horses. So what we did was we bought the farm, and that was about the time that I started my A-levels. So I started riding a little bit more, and I started getting back on Taffy, and I'd walk and trot in the arena quite happily. I was still really nervous in canter, but he wasn't like very helpful because he'd always set off because he knew I was nervous. He's that sort of horse that if he knows he can get away with it, oh, he will. So he was never very good for my confidence, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video when I get around to it about confidence on what I should have done in that situation, but what I didn't do, because I know a lot of you guys have been through similar situations. So anyway, 2013, it's A-levels. I've got a lot going on. We've got the farm now, and that's all going great. I'm slowly getting back into riding, but my A-levels were such an important thing in my life because I really wanted to go to university. And then I also at this point got diagnosed with a brain tumour. So I got diagnosed in 2015, just as I was finishing my A2 exams. Is when I got diagnosed. So luckily the brain tumour is benign, but I had to start treatment, and I had to, go to so many clinics and go for CT scans and meet with specialists and stuff like that. So the summer before uni, when I really wanted to get back with my confidence with riding before I went to uni, I didn't have time because I was suddenly facing health issues. Luckily my health is okay. I still have my brain tumour, but I'm on medication to shrink it. So then 2015 sort of rolls on, and it's time for me to go to university. So I went to Nottingham University and did animal science, and I was on an agricultural kind campus, and a lot of people had horses and a lot of people were into riding. And I was so determined. I joined the riding club and I was like, right, I need to get my confidence back. At this point, I would ride and I wasn't too scared, but I still wasn't competing. I still wasn't doing everything that I was before. So I made the decision that I needed another horse, and that if I got a big quiet cob, that would fix all my problems. So I went and I bought Charlie. So I bought Charlie because she'd been advertised as perfect for a novice or perfect for someone, you know, wanting to get back into riding, a real confidence giver, and obviously he's a really good boy. He doesn't really move, so he's perfect for anyone who is so scared of going fast. And I had Charlie live with me for a couple of months at uni, and then uni took over. So uni, when you start, seems really easy and like you've got loads and loads of time, and then you don't realise that after Christmas all of this work's going to hit you. So at Christmas time, Charlie came back to the house and my mum said she'd look after him for me, because I tried to find part owners for him, I tried everything, but there was no way I could look after this horse on my own at university. So Charlie moved back home with the other horses and mum was looking after him for me. So one day when I was back from university, we noticed that James wasn't looking very well, and sadly he did pass away. We're not sure what of, but he was very old at this stage, so we've always just said natural causes and old age. So he did sadly pass away, which was so heartbreaking for me, because he was my first pony and he literally taught me everything. He taught me how to ride, and it's the most heartbreaking loss we've ever had to go through. And we just missed having a small horse on the yard. So a few months after we lost James was when we got Caramel, because we've always had a small pony, like all those years, and we've always had a small pony. There's just something about them, their cheekiness and their sort of the fact that they're so vocal, and that was just so missing. So we got Caramel for my niece to ride and for me to show in hand, which you guys have seen. I did my vlog on it. We haven't done too much showing with her just because I haven't had the time, because I was always at uni, but that's what happened that year. So we had Charlie, we had Caramel, we had Archie, we had Danny, and we had Taffy. So now we've got 5 horses. And luckily Charlie did help my confidence hugely. I got back to where I wasn't scared to be around horses, I wasn't scared to get on a horse. I'd hack out again, which is one thing I refused to do for about 5 years, was hack out. And he was amazing. If it wasn't for Charlie, I wouldn't be doing YouTube, I wouldn't be riding. So I owe that horse a lot. He was very patient with me when I thought I was going to have a panic attack because I'm getting on a horse, and things like that. He was absolutely amazing. So uni got even crazier after 2015. So when it got to 2016 and I was like kind of going into my second year, I had less and less time to come home at weekends and things like that, because I was living quite a way away from home, and I'd like signed for my house at uni and everything, so I needed to be down there. So I decided to start part loaning, or kind of just like riding for people really. I wasn't really part loaning, I was just riding for people. So I actually had 2 loan horses that you guys have seen. So firstly I had Pinocchio. So Pinocchio was a little Warmblood that I was riding, and Pinocchio was fantastic. He got me back into jumping. So me and him used to jump quite a bit. I wanted to compete him, and we were getting really, really good. And then at the start of 2017, his owner messaged me to say she was selling him and did I want him. And at this point, we had 5 horses at home. My mum was going to kill me if I bought another one, so I had to say no, and sadly he was sold. So I then lost the horse that I was finally back, and I was jumping and I was ready to compete, and then I had to start all over again. So then I got through my January exams at uni, and I then started loaning Cooper. So Cooper was a little 13-2, I don't even know what breed he was, but he was a jumping machine. Now unfortunately I didn't get the chance to ride Cooper for very long. His stables that he was at, I found it very difficult to be there. It was very unwelcoming. He didn't have a stable, so you had to like borrow someone else's stable, and I just found the situation really difficult. He was the perfect horse for me at the time because he was a little bit of a pocket rocket. We used to go out hacking, we used to jump, I even did a bit of cross country on him, but I just didn't do very much of it, and because of the situation I never really filmed it, because it was one of those yards that you went down and there was like so many eyes on you, like what's she doing, like judging you and whispering behind your back, and oh, it was horrible. So I then quickly made the decision that I was really sorry I couldn't ride Cooper anymore, and I let his owner know. I was just like, the yard, I just can't cope with that. It was really not a good place to be. So also while I was at university in 2017, sadly we lost Archie. It was a really great loss for us because we loved him to pieces. He was a real big character if you've watched my vlogs from before then. So Archie sadly had cancer and he had to be put to sleep. So that's what happened with Arch. Also, I then was getting into my 3rd year of university, which is my final year for my undergraduate. So things were getting very serious at this point for me. So again, riding kind of took a back seat. But then I decided right in the middle of my finals that I was going to start riding again. So this was a few months after Cooper, and once again my confidence had skyrocketed. This always happens. Whenever I'm at the peak is when things go wrong. So I started riding for a show jumper. It was like a girlfriend boyfriend that had quite a lot of horses between them, and I was actually riding 2 horses. So I was riding a 17-hand Warmblood that actually used to be Pippa Funnell's ex-eventer, which was like crazy that I was getting to ride a horse that Pippa Funnell used to ride, and I was like, oh my god, it was incredible, and I was loving it. I was jumping like 1.40 meters on him. I'd go over anything. And then they said, can you ride the younger one? And I was like, yeah, I can do this. And she was only about 5 and she was about 16-2. And she was a very, very flighty mare. And to this day, I still don't know what happened. I've done a story time on it. So I was riding in the arena one day, and I still don't know what happened, but basically I came off. I remember her setting off, and I remember looking at the ground like I was about to fall. And then I woke up in the middle of the arena, looked down at my hands, and just saw blood everywhere. And I was like, what have I done now? The horse was still galloping about. I was trying to shout for help. I couldn't sit up. I couldn't stand, and I soon realised the blood was coming from my face. So I had been kicked in the face, basically, and knocked unconscious. I don't know how long for. So then, again, same scenario, ambulance, off to hospital we go. But I was like a couple of hours from home, and so I had to ring my parents in the ambulance and be like, I don't know what I've done, but can you meet me at the hospital? So my mum and dad trundled down to come and see what I've done now. And it turned out my injuries were, I'd broken this cheekbone in 3 places because I'd been kicked. The horse hoof mark was like that on my face. So I'd broken my cheekbone in 3 places. A tooth had been knocked out, my lip had been severed, my eye was cut open, this eye was cut open. I'll put a pic on really quickly now. It's not too graphic, but that's what my face looked like. I know, not good. And they also thought I'd damaged my spine once again. Oh, they also thought I'd swallowed my tooth. So I went for loads of scans. Luckily my spine was okay, it was just bruised. So they took my head thing off, and I couldn't sit my finals for university. So my face blew up for about 6 weeks. To be fair, this accident probably should have been worse than my first accident, but it wasn't. It didn't really knock my confidence too much. So I was feeling okay after this. I just had to wait ages before I could ride because my face had to heal, because the doctors basically said, so I had to meet with a plastic surgeon because he thought I was going to have reconstructive surgery on my face. But luckily I didn't knock it, so the bone didn't move too much. It's kind of different, but it wasn't too bad. So I had to have, I think it was like 3 months off from riding, just in case I did anything to my face. And I also had to then sit my exams later on, so I didn't graduate with all my friends. I had to graduate on my own because I had gone and got kicked in the face during exams. So yeah, don't start riding any crazy horses if you're at university and doing finals, guys. It doesn't end well. But anyway, that was 2018, and then a few months later we bought Chilli, and you pretty much know the story from here. So we got Chilli, and now at this point we've got Lucy, Chilli, Danny, Taffy and Caramel, and Charlie. I forgot about Charlie. So we've got the 6 horses that you guys now know. So then I spent another year at university doing my equine masters. So I finished that in 2019. So then I really started riding again in the last year. And obviously you guys now know I'm riding Chilli. I really want to get back into competing because I haven't done that for a few years now. Lucy, I want to do dressage on. We have a lot of big plans. Caramel, we've taken showing. Danny's retired, Taffy's retired, and Charlie, Charlie's just a big dog who we ride occasionally when his early onset arthritis isn't playing up. But yeah, so that takes us up to present day, guys, and as you now know, I'm currently starting to get Chilli back into jumping because we had the whole issue with his allergies and things like that. So as for the plans, the plan is to get Chilli jumping is my numero uno thing, and I want to compete on him next year. I want to get Lucy going nicely, and I want Charlie to be hacking out more regularly. So they are the future plans. But yeah, guys, so that is my riding story. I think I've covered everything. If not, and you think I've missed anything, just leave some questions in the comments below. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video because it's taken a lot of like working out when everything was to put this together, and obviously the help of my timeline, so handy. But yeah, guys, thank you ever so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow at 12. Bye, guys.